What's good, everybody? It's Jeff Lightsy Jr. here with the Black Boss channel. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe. I got a special guest today here, Mr. Don Page. He works for the Cleveland Browns down there in Cleveland. We'll talk more right after the bumper. What's good, everybody? Once again, it's Jeff Lightsy Jr. here with the Black Boss channel. We got Mr. Don Page in the building. Dom, how's it going, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. How you doing?
Hey, pretty good, bro. We cannot complain. I love bringing on people, bro, from my hometown, doing great things in their profession. Dom, just tell us. I know I already said that you work for the Cleveland Browns, but just tell the people at home what you do for Cleveland, for the Browns organization, and just how you got to that point, man.
Hey, so I'm the communications coordinator for the Cleveland Browns. For those who don't know what communications is, it's the same thing as media relations and public relations, all under the same umbrella, just different terms depending on your organization or career path. But, a little bit about me and my day-to-day functions is that, in PR, we have our hands in all facets of the organization.
Yeah.
But to sum it all up, we basically help the guys, players out, coaches out, business staff out with media requests. So prime example could be, let's say you're watching First Take and you see a player on that show. Let's say you see Odell or Jarvis on the show. The producers from First Take, they email our department and ask us if we would be willing to give these guys some pub on their platform. So we ask them if they're willing to do it. And if they're willing to do it, we circle back and forth and figure out the correct time. And we also give them media prep. So we prep them about what's upcoming up, what it's talking about in the news, what's happening next. We're trying to give
Yeah.
these guys and these coaches all of the information so that when they're going into these interviews, they are fully prepared and they are making sure that they give themselves the best entrance, the organization's best entrance, and also their family and the people that surround them the best interest. And it also makes me look good too when I give
Yeah.
them a good prep because they look good on camera. And another thing that we do is we keep up with all the statistical research. So when you're looking at these new statistics that are at the bottom line of ESPN or on Twitter, on Instagram, it's probably coming from our department. And that's huge because being able to have that, and most people think that we're in the public eye because they might see someone on camera, but really we're behind the scenes, and that's the way that I love it. And lastly, one thing that I would say that I'm doing in my space as I continue to grow in the field is just helping more about from a social justice front, giving these guys a platform to speak on how they feel and making them feel comfortable with the voices that they have, and also helping them understand that their platform is important and that there's millions of people that look at them and millions of children that look up to them. So it gives them the opportunity to use their platform in the most important way as possible. And lastly, I just want to say, one more thing that I do is, I help out with our community engagement. PR and CR, community relations, they all align with each other. So being able to have that alignment and giving the guys the opportunity to, give back to their community, if that's cleats donations. Jedrick Wills did a car donation last Christmas. So just small things like that add up to make sure that you're a well-rounded PR person. So that's a summary of, some of the things that I do on a day-to-day basis.
I mean, so you wear a bunch of hats, man. Like you would think, like you said, from someone that's coming from a media background, you talk to the PR guys, like you said, the media relation guys, to get in contact with the Jedrick Wills, with the Odells, with the Baker Mayfields or whoever. But you don't think about all that other stuff, like prepping them to talk to the media personalities by getting their community service, aligning that stuff up and helping them with that. I mean, that's something. Even you just taught me something because I was like, dang, I didn't even realize you guys would do something like that. Like that. That's pretty crazy to think about. Let's talk about you though, Don, bro. Like it couldn't have been easy to get to where you at. I mean, to have a position like that with a $1 billion organization in the NFL, just what did it take? What was some of what did you study in college? What did it take to get there with Cleveland and now in the business that you're in?
So what's crazy is when I entered UK back in 2014, my primary focus was I wanted to do business marketing.
Mm.
And when I took all those math classes my freshman year, I realized that math wasn't for me. So
I understand that
going
completely.
into
For
yeah, man,
real.
it just wasn't for me. After all the hours of tutoring every day, I just figured out there has to be a path for me to take. And it really took for me in my summer going into my sophomore year to actually write down what I wanted to do.
Mhm.
Because going to my freshman year, I just took that as it was. I ran with it. But once I wrote down what I wanted to do, there was two things that stood out to me, and that was writing and sports. And I had to figure out a way of how I can imply both of these together to go with my career. And that could have been, sports agent, reporter, journalist. I had no idea about PR, but primary focus was law school, get my GRE or get my GRE, or
Mhm.
just trying to figure out what I wanted to do to imply those two things. So going into sophomore year, I understood that, maybe a reporter or maybe a journalist was going to be my best bet. Did an internship at WOKY going into my junior year. I didn't like it. So I recircled back to my process, back to my going to my sophomore year, and I had to go back to the drawing board. And I'm like, what can I do with
Mhm.
writing and sports? And I had came across media relations. So I was trying to really divvy up anything that I could to get into media relations.
Mhm.
But I couldn't get into it my junior year because I got there too late as far as applying and sending my resume. So what
Yeah.
I did was my junior year, I worked at the PR and marketing office for the University of Kentucky, where I was writing press releases and transcript and doing transcripts from arts and culture, which was something that I wasn't really interested in, but I knew I had to get that experience.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that I did to tackle and get my experience. And I also worked at the Kentucky Kernel, our school newspaper, for about 2 months and realized that wasn't for me. But I still had to put myself in that position to work on my writing because you can never, ever, ever have enough practice in writing.
Yeah.
And my mentor tells me that all the time. So that's one thing that I always wanted to do was just be better at writing. So I did that, figured out that wasn't for me because they had me writing meal swipe stories and I was trying to figure out how I could get into sports.
Yeah.
And what I would do was I would try to write down little notes and jabs and nuggets from our sports editor at the time. So after that, I also worked in the College of Law because I was still interested, going to law school,
Mhm.
figuring out what I wanted to do. But now to make a long story short, senior year, I was able to get blessed enough to work for the media relations department, worked there, knew that I wanted to work in the NFL one day, knew that I could have potential to work in the NBA, but the NFL was always my primary focus.
Mhm.
Did the internship, was supposed to work the NCAA women's basketball tournament, and then out of nowhere got an email from somebody at the Washington Redskins at the time, which is now the Washington football team, about a college seminar during the NFL Combine. And I'm like, man, what can I do? Like how am I going to be able to go to both places at one time because they all fell under the same
Yeah.
date? So I go back to school and I talked to my manager at the time that was at UK Athletics, and I'm like, hey, like I got this email signing me up for the seminar. Like, what do you think is best for me? I really want to work in the league, but I don't want to, decommit to a commitment that I made
Mhm.
with the women's basketball tournament. And he told me, I signed you up. He was like, you told me that you wanted to work in the league. You've done a hell of a job so far. You always, you're present, you're punctual, and you're very cognizant of what's going on. Even though this is your first year, I just really think that there is something out there for you. So go and see what you can do. Man, I went, met all 32 teams that were there, and ended up meeting somebody that was at the Jets, and the rest is history. He's one of my top mentors. He's been there for me ever since, and that's really how I got into the league.
Man.
So I got into the league at the Jets, was there for a season, thought I was going to get full time after that. Obviously, the Lord had a plan for me. Didn't get that full time opportunity. Worked the Super Bowl in Atlanta. Met some people at the Browns. The Browns liked me. The Browns told me, hey, we don't want you to start in July because that's when most interns start in like June, July. They said, no, we want you to start ASAP. So they got a call. I got a call during the tournament that year too, during the men's basketball tournament. I remember I was watching the game and our SVP at the time called me and, broke the news that he wanted me to start as soon as possible. And, did my internship for 2019 and they hired me full time. So I've been with the Browns ever since, one of my
Man.
third season.
Hey, that's dope, bro. Like it's pretty good. The great what's great about this story is the story about persistence, right? Like it was a couple of things that you didn't like, right? Like okay, I thought I'd like this. Okay, that ain't it. You know what I mean? I thought I like that ain't it. And then you found the lane that best suit you, stuck to it, showed patience, but showed determination, and folks, like you said, the cards were laid that was what needed to be for you, man. I mean, anybody can relate to that kind of story like that. That's
For
super
sure.
dope. Like looking back on it. Once again, we're talking to Don Page. He works in the communications department with the Cleveland Browns. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe. Now, Don, before we started this, we were talking about you. You talked about some of your mentors, and you said some of the people that some of your biggest inspiration. Who were some of those people, or one or two of those people that you said kind of give you some inspiration and help you on a day to day?
So one of the biggest mentors in my life is Bruce Spade. He's the head PR guy for the Carolina Panthers, but he was with me at the Jets. He was the head PR guy there. And me and Bruce sparked it off right. First day I went through the door, one thing that he always instilled in me is that the Lord has a plan. You know, he's always the one that's on me about writing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of my mentors. And then another of my mentors is Jared Winley. He's at the Jets as well. He's now the head guy for the football operations, for football communications. And when I tell you he was on me every single day when I started at the Jets, I'm like, man, what is going on? Like, what did I do? There was some times where Jared was on me all the time to where I would have to go into Bruce's office and I'm like, hey, like, Bruce, does Jared not like me? And he was like, you got to understand, like, he's supposed to be on you. Like you're young, you're black, like you're in this position for a reason. But like if you don't have this type of discipline at the beginning of it, then what type of discipline will you have when you're wanting to run a department one day? So,
Mm-hmm.
learning from those two guys was important. And then I'm under another mentor now. So as you can see, since I've been in the league, I've had black bosses. So
Mm-hmm.
that's, really instilled in my mind of how to move and that I need to be very strategic and I need to be who I am because I can only control what I can control. And then my last mentor
Absolutely.
is Peter John Baptiste. He's the senior vice president of communications at the Browns now. And I learn from him every single day. Like like what I like to do a lot is I like to just sit back and just watch how they move because when you watch how they move and you see how well respected they are, not just from a league standpoint, but from a media standpoint, how these writers and reporters and producers talk highly of these guys, like I want to be that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
watching them move is very important to me.
Yeah, hey, that's dope, man. That's dope that you were able to connect. Cause like in a space like that, man, you don't hear about a lot of black men in authority, right? Like black men, and they're able to each one teach one, right? And they're able to help you, bring you up, and make sure you're working and you're maximizing everything to your ability. And that's what it sounds like is taking place, with those connections with those people, man. That's super dope to hear about. And once again, we're talking to Dom Page. He works in the communications department with the Cleveland Browns. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe. Now, Dom, talk to me about the day to day about working in the NFL. Like, what is that? I mean, and the people here see NFL, see Cleveland Browns. You think Baker, you think Odell, Jarvis, Jedrick, Nick Chubb, Kareem, all these guys I can name on and on. But what's it like for you? I mean, you talked about you wanted to work in the NFL. You wanted this position. You wanted this responsibility. But what is it like for Don Page working in the National Football League?
Man, honestly, it's like at this point, I must say I'm a little bit too spoiled. Like, you know, like a lot of guys they come in and that the eyeballs are big and that was me at once. Like, the biggest thing for me was when I first got to the Jets. I'm like, yo, like we get free food, we get free breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Like I didn't have to spend $1 on food. So like that's one of the things that just made me smile every day. I'm bringing food home, bringing snacks home. I'm like, I don't have to spend money on food. Like I'm saving at least $80 a week on not having to buy food. So like that's one of the biggest takeaways for me. But other than that, like man, these guys, they're just regular people. Like they're really just regular people. Like from a young black man's standpoint, it may be easier to navigate in that space because they're the same age as me. They like the same music as me. We like the same type of clothing. We listen to the same music. There's just a lot of similarities that we have. So, and when you're navigating through the process of trying to get to know guys and develop relationships and actually cultivate those relationships, it's a little bit easier for me. But you also have to understand and find that fine balance between not being too close and having that professional ability when you need to present things. So a lot of people, the reason why I say this too is because a lot of people think it's just all glitz and glamour that you're in the locker
Mhm.
room. But there's a lot of times where you have to have those conversations. And what I mean by those conversations are difficult conversations of like if some guys are telling you no, or if some guys aren't willing to do things, then sometimes you have to put that pressure on them. And that could be a good thing and a bad thing. Like, you could be annoying at times, but that's part of our job. Is, sometimes we have to be annoying. And that could potentially diminish a relationship depending on how much you push up and apply that pressure. But I just want people to know that you have to have that fine line when you are going in the locker room or when you're just talking to anybody in the organization. Not too many people understand that. They think that you just have to be cool with the players to be cool with the players. It's not all about that, because you are there for a reason, and the number one reason you're there for it is to do your job.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Dom, you spoke on something earlier that I thought was interesting that you brought up, and that was the fact that you help the players, in yourself, quite honestly, with the social justice and things of that nature. I do want to ask you, just how important is that to you, not to just you and to, I mean, not to just like the organization and different individual players, but how fulfilling or important is that for you to not only help those players, but when you're helping those players get involved with certain social justice things, you're actually involved yourself. How important is that to you to be involved in those kind of things?
It's important to me because at the end of the day, we're the future. Like, going back to what I just said with your last question, we're all the same age. We're 23 to 30 within that median. So it's like when you have these guys that are willing to give back to their community, like a perfect example is Miles Garrett. Like, he's really big on poetry and giving back with literature. So like, you want to have Maya Angelou as a reference, and you're giving back and giving books. Malik Jackson, he just donated Juneteenth books all around the country. That's a plan. So right now we're working on trying to develop the plan to give a book to each school, elementary school in particular, in each state. Like, those are things that these guys are willing to work on. And when you have someone like me, I guess, that is involved in that space as well, it's very important. Like, I was reading a book, Obama's book, in the preface, if I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a sentence in there that said there's a fundamental context of what America should be and what it is. Like, when I read that line stands with me forever, because when you looking in the locker room, it's a bunch of us. And
Mhm.
with them being a bunch of us, and then on the business side, there's not too many of us, it's a handful of us, like which voice is more powerful? So
Mhm.
it goes back to my challenge of me challenging these guys to use their platform. And there's millions of people, there's thousands of people that are willing to see what these guys have to say. So with me, I have to make sure that I give them a reason why I feel like it's important to them to get back in that space. Like Shedrick Redwine, he actually just got claimed off of waivers from the by the Jets, but he was previously on the Browns. He's like heavily involved. Like, he was one of the top guys that was involved in the social justice space, that he even created the Gloria Redwine Foundation named after his grandmother, and his
Mhm.
grandfather was heavily involved in the social justice space. So it's like, it just doesn't start with these guys. Like, some of these guys have families and friends that are really, really, really involved in this space that are meaningful to them.
Yeah, no, yeah, and those are things a lot of times aren't broadcasted like they should be, right? Like, I mean, we know that certain things have happened in the NFL with the NFL, and they don't always get the best rap, and rightfully so in some instances. But to hear the individual stories about the individual players that are taking the time out of their day, to taking the money out of their pocket to donate like they should, that's amazing to hear that about those, especially about those certain individuals.
Oh
Dom,
yeah.
I want to ask you about you, man. Like, you come from Louisville just like me, man. What's it like when you're talking to people from our hometown about, like, when they ask you about working in the NFL? I mean, that's a dream come true for a lot of folks to be in that kind of position. But what are those conversations like? Whether it's with family members, with friends, with just random people that just hit you up, just what are those conversations like, and how does that make you feel that they feel like you've accomplished a lot so far?
A lot of people ask me, man, if I'm a reporter or a journalist. So I'm glad that I'm on this platform, that I'm, able to explain like my day-to-day functions, so people can actually realize that I'm not a reporter. I'm the guy that's the middleman between the reporter and the player. But going back to your question, being back from Louisville, a lot of people, it's funny, a lot of people's been hitting me up lately, and I love it because I don't just want it to be me in the league. I want everybody to make it. I don't care if it's coaching. So I got friends that are coaches right now that I'm trying to send them information on fellowships around the league. I'm trying to send them football operation jobs around the league because it's not just coaching and it's not just playing. There's so many job functions that are within the organization and not just including ticket sales. So like when I have people reach out to me, I try to make sure that I get where they're coming from because I don't like when people just hit me up and they're like, I want to work in sports. I'm like, okay, I understand you want to work in sports,
What you
but
want to do?
can you give me can you
Yeah.
give me some information on like what type of dynamic you want to enter when you're in the sports field?
Hmm.
Because you can't just enter sports and just think it's all sweet. You do have to
Absolutely.
realize like a lot of people ask me questions on like, oh, why are you working on the holidays? I'm like, man, look, you got to understand it's the season. I only
Yeah.
get two holidays off, and that's Memorial Day and the 4th of July. But other than that, I'm locked in on the season. So a lot of people, like going back to earlier, they think it's glitz and glamour, but there's a lot of challenges that we do face. And I try to make sure that I let them know up
Mhm.
front that these are the challenges that you could potentially face so it gets their mind right and their mindset right when they're thinking about applying to these positions. Because you got to think there's no NFL, there's no NBA jobs in Louisville nor Kentucky.
Mhm.
So you have to make that sacrifice to move away. You have to make that sacrifice to be away from your family. And you have to make that sacrifice to divvy up the time and control your time management because there's some days to where you might work 7 days a week. Like training camp, for instance, we're still in training camp mode. People's asking me, oh, why are you working on a Sunday? We got practice.
Games is
Like,
played on Sundays too. Yeah.
exactly. Games are played on Sunday. So in reality, from July all the way into February, I'm working 6 days out of the week and
Mhm.
7 days when I travel. So it's like you're working nonstop every day. So I want people to know that up front because I don't want people to just know about the glitz and glamour because I wouldn't want nobody to tell me just about the glitz and glamour. I want to know all ins and outs. I want to know the challenges that you face. I want to know the sacrifices that you made because that'll help me plan strategically if I want to be in that position too. And that's another
Absolutely.
thing that I ask all the people that have been in that position before me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, keeping it real, raw, and authentic. It's like, hey, if this is what you want to do, these are the sacrifices you're gonna have to make, but you can
Yeah.
also reap a ton of benefits. Dom, I don't want to hold you too
And
much longer, man. Go for it. Go for it. What was that?
I just wanted to say, a lot of people think you get paid a lot too when you start off. I gotta realize just because you got that NFL logo and that Cleveland Browns logo doesn't mean you getting paid $1 million, $300,000 a year. Like, yeah, the benefits are really good and whatnot, but you still gotta remember you working these 7 days a week, six
Yeah.
days a week for this. Like,
It's a harsh reality for some folks, but I mean,
yeah,
but it is, like you said, it is rewarding, right? Like you get a chance to do something that you love. You get a chance to be around the game. You get a chance to, meet certain peoples, be in certain circles, and that you wouldn't have been able to be in. Am I correct? Yeah.
100% correct. I, the reason why I just froze is because I just had a couple flashbacks of like some instances where I felt like I made it or whatnot. And I look back in reality, I'm like, man, you didn't make it. That was just an experience. And I forget about those experiences though.
Hmm.
I got friends and family bringing up those type of experiences. I guess a prime example could be the Super Bowls. Me
Hmm.
working the Super Bowls, I hate to say it, but I'm kind of spoiled with that now because I'm like, I've worked too, and I know I'll be working more. But it's like a lot of people they look at like, man, you're working the Super Bowl, and I'm like, yeah, I'm working the Super Bowl, but I also am working 5:30 in the morning until 11:30 at night. But it's a cool experience to be able to be in that atmosphere and see certain people that other people wouldn't even meet. Um, I think it's just a big thing for me, and I just really hope that people understand that from being from Louisville, you don't have to have that mindset of I don't want to move or I can't get out because you got to think there's so many people that have been in our position before that has made it out. A close friend of mine, a couple close friends of mine, like I want to shout out Ronnie Baker because you are one of the reasons why I am who I am today. Like just watching you move in high school, like really like just helped me understand that I can make it out of Louisville. And then another family member of mine, Keelan, like I just remember when me and him would be in high school, and before that, just talking about like, man, when you make it to the NBA, or man, when I make it in my career, we're gonna be able to link up in those cities. And it actually is happening. Like when they play in Cleveland, I go to the games and it's like
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing my dream job and he's doing his dream job too. And it's like when you talk about those things and it actually comes into fruition, like it's just an amazing feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. And the guy he's talking about Keelan Martin, of forward over with the Indiana Pacers. He made it to the NBA. Dom and Keelan were in high school together, both at Ballard High School, along with Ronnie Baker. There's a bunch of athletes, bunch of geniuses come out of Ballard. I went to Mail. We got a few guys too, but like, but Dom, man, I'm gonna get you out
Shout
on
out to
this,
Mel.
man. Yeah, I'll get you out on this, buddy. Just for anybody, you said a few inspirational words, but for those said it's coming up, whether it's Louisville, Cleveland, wherever across this country that want to do some amazing things. Just if you could leave them off with a few words, we'll get you out on this. What are some of those few words or inspirational words you'd want to say to someone who's trying to figure it out, that maybe wants a job in sports, that maybe wants to someday do what you do? What is it that you tell them?
Don't be timid. Like you don't want to go in and timid. A lot of young black people, young black women, young black men, we go into the corporate space and we cringe up because we may be one of 10 around, and we think that the way that we dress, the way that we handle ourselves, the way that we speak, or just flat out period, the way we carry ourselves, we might not think that's acceptable, but you got to realize that's acceptable. Like with all the stuff that's going on in the world now, they need people like us. They need our opinion. So following back off of that, never lose your power. You don't never want to lose your power. Your power is so, it may be so underrated to you, but you don't want to lose that because there's a lot of things that can happen if you do lose your power. And also for those who are looking into being in the sports field, you always want to be cognizant of the organization. So when you're going into these interviews, do the research on the organization that you're going to. And if that means you just got to read the bios of the owners and the front office of that, do that, please, because that will help you in the interview process of you being cognizant of everything that goes on within that organization. And if it's not within the sports team, if it's in the corporate space, if it's Humana, for an example, do the research. So when you go in those interviews, you are prepared and you can attack the day.
Absolutely, absolutely. Once again, this is Dom Page. He works in the communications of the Cleveland Browns. Thank you, Dom, for taking the time out, man. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share,
Hit that
subscribe.
thumbs up.
Yeah, and we'll see you guys next